We don't need anti-vaxxers like RFK, who's surging to 19% in the polls. Not when we've got Kamala Harris and Joe Biden ensuring that everything will stay the same. Stay the same. Hello there, you 6.4 million awakening wonders. Thanks for joining us on this voyage towards truth and freedom, where new voices must be included, where we must be bold and brave, where we must be willing to look at the complexity that human life entails, that nobody's perfect actually. New alliances, new ideas will be necessary if you're serious about change. But guess who's not serious about change? The establishment. The establishment is about keeping things established, static, stagnant, the same. The balanced press response to RFK's candidacy has been, well, it has been balanced because they're all saying exactly the same thing. Look at all these headlines. Not a single original opinion among them. Could there be some reason that they're all willing to parrot the same tune, all willing to sing from the same hymn sheet? Well, of course there is, because they care about you and your safety. They're just trying so hard to protect you that they can't have nuanced conversations because you're too stupid to understand nuance. Why do we need these apparently radical figures, these apparently alternative discourses, while we've got two of the greatest leaders in political history already in the White House? Let's remind ourselves.
So I think it's very important, as you have heard from so many incredible leaders, for us at every moment in time, and certainly this one, to see the moment in time in which we exist and are present.
Got to see the moment in time in which we got to see that one.
And to be able to contextualize it, to understand where we exist in the history.
Yeah, that's right. Oh, yeah.
And in the moment as it relates not only to the past, but the future.
But she's only vice president. Luckily, in the White House, we've got a brilliant wit and raconteur. We've got a radical thinker and agitator. We've got someone who's willing to stand up for what he believes in and ain't afraid to communicate it.
President Biden was photographed holding a cheat sheet during his press conference yesterday. Look, it has a photo of Los Angeles Times reporter Courtney Subramanian.
Courtney Subramanian, I'm on Joe Biden's press pass notes.
The card also includes her question. You can also see someone's handwriting telling the president that she will ask the first question.
The whole thing is theatre. He's told in advance what the question will be, who's asking the question, how to say the name phonetically. We are engaged in a spectacle. Of course, the machine, the theatre, the production cannot take radical voices. Of course, the mainstream media has to smear any alternative voices that might challenge establishment narrative. Of course, the mainstream media will support the establishment in smearing, shutting down, and ridiculing any alternative voices.
So how's he doing? Is this just a fringe 1% sort of a guy?
Well, no, he's polling nearly 20% in the primary against Joe Biden, according to the Fox News poll that came out yesterday.
Here's some good, balanced reporting on a democratic process from the Democrat-supporting mainstream media.
And I'll point out that that's not the only poll that shows him up in double digits, right?
In the Kennedy, you have part of the American establishment historically, and in Marianne Williamson, you have a woman who advocates for civil rights, who advocates for identity politics, but who is also anti-establishment. How will the mainstream media support these diverse voices?
Is it precedent for an incumbent? You're a week, 2 days or 3 days after your announcement,
And you get this crazy guy out there who's getting nearly 20%.
20%.
And the fact that they're willing to side in a poll with two literal crazy people?
Do you think?
Crazy. Couple of crazies. Thanks, mainstream media. Let's hear a little more about crazy RFK and the crazy things he believes in, the crazy old lunatic. Last week, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. launched his campaign for President 2024. His main campaign theme is to end the corrupt alliance of big business and government. Oh, hello! I don't see any evidence that the government and big business are colluding. That's why we have a fair democracy where all of the things that you need in your life are simply voted for and then hey! He blames this alliance for the rigging of the system that has destroyed the middle class over the last 40 years. He points to the nefarious collusion between big government and big corporations and the transfer of enormous wealth and power over the last 40 years to an American oligarchy, an elite that does not take the needs of the majority in into account. Hello? Butterfly net, white coats, lunatic. I think we all know that big business and the government and the mainstream media are trying their hardest. And the real problem, you know what it is? It's bloody anti-vaxxers. All these problems, transfer of enormous wealth and power, I think can be traced to people not wanting to immediately take new medicines. Kennedy has been marginalised by the mainstream media for 18 years due to his scepticism of vaccines and for questioning the collusion between pharmaceutical companies and the CDC and FDA. Oh, just because they give them their funding or receive royalties from them, I suppose that... No, that sort of makes sense, actually. His views on the Ukraine war. We are driving Russia and China into an alliance. Oh, next you'll be telling me that the American government themselves don't even believe this war is winnable. Ooh. And sucking money from our urgent domestic need have also served to ostracise him. What a crackpot. You've got plenty of money sloshing about. Tell us now how you're spending all your excess wealth, probably on cheap fuel, delicious, lovely, nutritious food, and fantastic, wholesome entertainment. But multiple recent polls show Robert F. Kennedy Jr. pulling double-digit support in the primary, including a Fox News survey on Wednesday that showed him at 90%. Almost as if, like, a lot of people believe that big business, the government, and the media, and big pharma, and a powerful war machine are pushing their agenda into your face and down your throat at the expense of truth and honesty. It's weird. It's like some territories opened up where people are willing to listen to ideas that would have once been regarded as radical. Strange, really, but mostly the problem with this guy is he's nuts. The National Review last week published an article suggesting that such a double-digit performance from Kennedy could prove costly for Biden. No incumbent president in the past 50 years has ceded that much of the vote to a primary challenger and won re-election, it's noted. Watch them shut this guy down. This is already someone who will not appear on the mainstream media unless it's to be slammed, attacked, and smeared. They are working hard. They are working round the clock to ensure that voices that are genuinely in support of the issues you care about are shut down. Because if you hear any alternative ideas, if you feel that there's a hope for you, if you see a vision, an alternative to the drudgery they impose upon you, you'll obviously vote for it, right? I know I would. Let me know in the chat in the comments. But anyway, let's see what this nutcase RFK has to say. Let's trust our own eyes, our own ears, and our own guts rather than the mainstream media, but I bet you he is nuts. Look at him sat there in front of some books. What a square.
I've been fighting corporate corruption my entire life, but I understand that today the problem is much larger than a few crooked individuals. The problem is a system that no longer serves the people, and a people who are so divided and so fearful that they are easily ruled.
No, that's not what's happening. Like, people are really coming together, and it is just a few crooked individuals. All we have to do is bloody well vote for Joe Biden again, and then everything will be really, really different. You just carry on doing the same thing, RFK, and then everything will just sort of spontaneously improve itself, right? Like, oh.
It's time to unlearn the reflexes of fear and blame and find ways to unify ourselves and turn our country around.
Uh-oh, he's talking about emotions, he's talking about real feelings, he's talking about real connection. Get ready for some serious smearing.
I won't pretend to you that it will be easy, but I know what it will take. My father said it: love, wisdom, and compassion toward one another.
And I seem to remember that his father went on to have a long and fruitful career with that anti-establishment rhetoric, which, But surely, what about his brother, though? But what about the civil rights leaders at that time, like Martin Luther King and Malcolm X? Mate, you might want to fucking shut up.
We will scale down the war machine and bring our resources home.
Boo! Boo! Keep our resources over there! Give the money to the military-industrial complex, you crackpot! There's nothing crazy about every American tax dollar giving over $1,000 a year to the military-industrial complex while they suffer at home. That's sanity!
We will rebuild our water systems, repair our roads.
No! Who wants war systems and roads? Keep with the wealth transfer to the economic system that was creating $1 billion a day during the pandemic. Boo! Cuckoo! Cuckoo!
Modernize our railroads and clean up our environment.
Who's to say the railroads need modernising? And can you think of even one example where an unmodern railroad and an environmental damage ever come together in a terrible, terrible collision in East Palestine? I can't think of... No, there is a good example of that.
We will also clean up government and earn back the people's trust.
I am very angry. I am very angry. That's a person who's actually thought, what is it that I'm here for? I'm actually very angry. I've had enough of this. But to RFK's point, Congress people owning stocks and shares in the companies they regulate, there's no other way of doing it. Having them individually lobbied to by private corporations, it's not like you could, I don't know, ban that. And having parties funded by private donors from the world of big business, that could never be banned either. There's nothing at all that could ever be done. Boo! Cuckoo! Cuckoo!
We will end the secrecy, the censorship, and the surveillance.
No, the secrecy, the surveillance, these are our proudest traditions.
We will face honestly the darker parts of our history, the genocide, the racism, not to shame or blame or punish, but to repair as best we can in a spirit of compassion and kindness toward all.
Boo! Compassion, kindness, no shaming and blaming, but an honest appraisal of things that have gone wrong and a new way to surge forward while simultaneously challenging elite interests. This is exactly the kind of person that you don't want. Hopefully the mainstream media and the government will spend a lot of time convincing you to never vote for anyone like this, who plainly is some sort of selfish, mad pig.
I'm inviting all of you to join me to create an America that we can believe in and be proud of again. I'm Robert F. Kennedy Jr., and I'm running for President of the United States.
Do you know what I was thinking the whole time during that? Anti-vaxxer, 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 like the mainstream. When he was talking about an honest appraisal of America's past, curtailing the interests of the powerful, having a cleaner, clearer, more transparent and reliable democracy, I was thinking, all these things are not as important as vaccines.
It is not in America's national interest to push Russia closer to China. That is a cataclysm. Number two, it's not in our national interest to do something that could involve us in a nuclear exchange with a country that has more nuclear weapons than us.
Yes, it is. We'll win. We'll win that nuclear exchange. You're a coward and not a patriot. Boo!
Many of the steps that we've taken in the Ukraine have seemed to indicate that our interest is in prolonging the war rather than shortening it. So if those are our objectives, to have regime change and exhaust the Russians, that is completely antithetical to a humanitarian mission.
Now, this is a propaganda piece, and everyone looks good during their own propaganda, don't they? Remember last week when we watched Joe Biden's propaganda, however, he never once mentions corporatism. He never once mentions war. What he did say when he spoke to powerful donors is nothing will fundamentally change. RFK is talking about change. That is why we are going to witness an unprecedented smearing of RFK, primarily, I would contest, from the left, not from the right, from the left. The people that are supposed to be supporting those values, the people that say they care about equality, the people that say they care about healing America's past, care about genocide, that care about slavery, that apparently are supposed to care about ordinary working Americans and ensuring that a discourse is created that doesn't needlessly generate shame and division. So if they really care about those issues, why is it that in the next few weeks, all you're gonna hear them talk about is anti-vax, anti-vax, anti-vax crackpot? Because they don't really care about that stuff. They put that stuff up front. Meanwhile, business deals, corporate donors, lobbying, they're not going to do anything about that because they're part of the same establishment. That's what I think. Tell me in the chat, in the comments, if you agree with me. The stance on war is one of the things that's most surprising. When did the so-called left stop caring about war? Is the best solution really to prolong this war? The best solution for who? For Ukrainian people? Is that what's best for Ukrainian people? Let me know in the chat in the comments. Let's have a little read. Joe Biden has now committed us to a forefront global crusade against Russia, China, Iran, and a continually shifting terrorist hit list. We got Russia, big country, ain't going nowhere. China, big country, on the march, rising up. Iran, a country that's currently going for a progressive revolution itself that we could be supporting, but we're at war with them. And terrorists. We'll never forget those guys from the good old days who it's impossible to say who they are and who they aren't. Depending on which day it is, we can say anybody's a terrorist. That's what makes terrorists great. I mean, awful. Grr, I hate them. None of these enemies threaten the survival or well-being of Americans. So it could be argued that we could just sort of ignore them. or leave them alone, or mind their own business. But where's the money in that? And the record of the United States in coddling dictators and torturers, violating international law and invading other countries mock the claim that we are fighting for universal human values. Oh yeah, we're not fighting for that, are we? Let me know in the chat. What are we fighting for? The War Machine budget just for 2024 is $842 billion. And your point is? Add the money for Homeland Security and the State Department and you reach a national security tab of over $1.3 trillion. Yeah. Lots of money for a military that hasn't won a serious war since 1945. That's interesting. Almost as if there's some other intention other than winning wars. But what could that be? So long as these forever wars were limited to distant places most Americans couldn't find on a map and Pentagon contracts were deftly allocated among congressional districts, it was all politically manageable. Protected by distance and dollars, Americans could root for Team America on their infotainment channels. Insulated from their constituents, politicians could play and profit from the great game of global geopolitics. But this new Cold War is rapidly raising the stakes. The adversaries are formidable, and the conflicts will be much harder to exit. Yeah, almost like what RFK is saying about driving China and Russia closer together is a bad idea. We have already reached the limits of our productive capacity supplying weapons to Ukraine. Ukraine has used up a 13-year supply of Stinger anti-aircraft missiles and a 5-year supply of Javelin anti-tank missiles. The US produces 14,155mm artillery shells a month. Ukraine burns through that much in 2 days. Seems like a good business deal. Neither we nor our NATO allies can deliver what Ukraine needs for the victory we are promising it. Oh, it's impossible then, like that whistleblower said on that chat. At the same time, Washington is openly preparing for a war with China over Taiwan. Oh, so that's another war for profit then, not a humanitarian war. Biden opened his global crusade against Russia by promising the world that Americans would sacrifice for others. America stands up to bullies. This is who we are. Rather, this is who we say we are. Public support for our Ukraine adventure seems to be following the patterns of Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan. An initial rush of jingoistic flag waving and outrage at the enemy, then second thoughts. Support for sending weapons to Ukraine declined from 60% last May to 48% in January. And that is with ubiquitous, universal media support, with people that work for the military-industrial complex appearing on mainstream media as unbiased pundits. Even then, naturally, people start to think a war is unnecessary and costly. A majority oppose sending troops, some of whom are already there as inspectors. Oh my God, this inspection is terrifying. Inspection is a dirty business, son. No one truly wins an inspection. Oh man, this inspection is killing me. Inspectors! The new Cold War will further feed the militarism that has pervaded our political culture with increased government surveillance and weapons of war for local police departments. Almost as if the real enemy is you. Charges that war skeptics are disloyal have begun to permeate the mainstream media. A whiff of McCarthyism is in the air. The main opposition to Biden's Ukraine policy is the radical right and will disappear if the GOP wins in 2024. Left Democrats talk wistfully of diplomacy. It would be nice if there was some diplomacy, but it's just not possible. But since Biden is currently their only prospect for 2024, Democrats who disagree with him have to shut up. Or what they could do is support a genuine candidate if they are interested in change. I don't believe that this system can deliver real change. I don't believe that a candidate like RFK will be allowed to flourish by the political system, by the eternal mechanics of the Democrat Party. We saw a much less radical version of this in Bernie Sanders, a former independent that ran for a while and then was crushed by the Democratic Party. I don't believe the mainstream media will give airtime to these ideas. But I believe that we, the actual people, can support this kind of language, this kind of ideology, and this kind of change. The one thing they don't want is change. The one thing that's likely to bring about change is an informed populace. If we inform one another, if we support radicals from across the political spectrum, then this institutionalized, concretized corruption will be blown apart. That is the only war we should be interested in. The war against corruption shouldn't be about condemning individuals. Forget it. We should be about supporting important ideas like not having an Armageddon, supporting ordinary Americans, finding new alliances, ending the cultural war, ending the actual wars, finding new ways to move forward together before we destroy ourselves. But that's just what I think. Let me know what you think in the comments and chat. If you enjoyed this video, have a look at either of these. Turn on the notification bell because we need to stay in comms with you every single day when we make this content just for you. More important than any of that, though, is that you please stay free.